Hey folks, it's Keycloak time again, and today I want to talk about Keycloak and React.js integration. So people are still asking how to integrate their React.js based application with Keycloak, how to force users to authenticate themselves, how to log in, and how to protect certain views, certain components from rendering if a user has a certain role or something. So this is pretty simple. I already started with this 4 or 5 years ago when I did my first React.js and Keycloak project, and I did it pretty the same way, the similar way also today in current projects. And I want to show you how to do this with no third-party library, just on your own code, so you don't need anything else. So before we look at the source code, we will have a look into the application itself. So let's start with it at the local host. It's not 300, it's 3000 of course. And you see the application is loading, initializing, and I'm redirected to the Keycloak login page so that I have to authenticate myself. I have to log in, and then I'll be redirected back to the application, and my username is printed. I have a logout button, and I can see a list of best books ever. Of course, it's my book I wrote some years ago about serverless computing in AWS, and I can add new books, and I can delete books. So I can add a book I wrote myself, Keycloak Masterclass. Of course, I didn't write this book. And I can delete it again, and I can have a look into details, whatever, nothing special, just a short demo application with some functionality. And yeah, that's it. Now, let's have a look to the source code, how all this is done. So it starts every time with the index.js. It's a standard React.js application with the help of Create React app. It's not ejected. It's still a Create React app. And yeah, that's the index.js. You see the React DOM render function rendering the base node, the root node of the application. And you also see I have 3 services. That's not that common approach of dealing with things, but I started to use services some years ago to encapsulate things together, to have things in separate classes, and there I can better deal with it. Instead of mixing all these JavaScript files with different approaches. So in the early days, I had the Keycloak state also put in the Redux state of the React application. But then I came across the thing that my Redux store and the application state is something completely different than the authentication state. So the Keycloak adapter manages its own state independently from anything other, because the Keycloak JavaScript adapter is a universal library you can use in pretty every JavaScript application, no matter if React.js, if Angular, if jQuery, if vanilla JavaScript, whatever. And it will handle its own state. So I said, don't put it to the Redux store, handle it on your own servers. And that's what the user service is about. The user service, it's a service class dealing with all user-related things, also the authentication. Then I have a store service just to set up the Redux store, and an HTTP service to set up all HTTP related services. So for our demo, the store service is not interesting. It's just the user service and the HTTP service. And yeah, have a look into the init Keycloak function. We're giving the render app function into. Yeah. Let's have a look into it. User service. So the user service just uses the standard Keycloak JavaScript adapter, Keycloak-js at npm. And we're creating the Keycloak object with the constructor, and the location where the config file is located. All this is also shown in the documentation of the JavaScript adapter. It's a standard regular Keycloak-JSON file with the realm, the auth server URL. It's on my local host, of course, for this demo. We don't need SSL, and it's a public client. Of course, JavaScript clients need to be public. Putting in a secret in a JavaScript application and delivering it to the customer's browser, then it's no more secret at all. We're loading the Keycloak-JSON to configure the Keycloak object, and then we have the init Keycloak function, and this init Keycloak function will call the init function at the Keycloak object. And we have several options. In this case, I'm using the check SSO function option to only check the SSO state at the server. So is this user authenticated or not? I also could use login required in here, but so login required will force the user to log in if he's not. But I'm using in my demo application this also the silent check SSO feature. And for the silent check SSO feature, we have to use the check SSO on load option. So that's it. And then I have to deal with the authenticated state in the result of the promise, if the user is authenticated or not. And if he's also authenticated, I can call the callback I've handed into the function, which is the React renderer function. And otherwise, if it's not authenticated, I will force a login. So I will redirect the user to the login page. So again, if I use the onload option login required, I can I just can call the unauthenticated callback in here. I don't have to check if the user is authenticated or not, because this will do the Keycloak adapter on myself. But then I can not use the silent check SSO feature. So yes, the initialization function, and there are some other convenience function just to wrap, so that I don't have to deal with the Keycloak object directly in my code. Theoretically, it would be possible to change the Keycloak authentication server to any other OpenID Connect authentication server without changing the application code, just changing the code in the user service. That's why I put everything in the user service and put some wrapper methods, convenience methods in here. So we have a method for get username to get the username from the parsed token. We have a method or function to check if a user has one of the given roles. I can deal with in the code, we will see that. And I have the get token and the update function to get the access token, the current access token, and to check if the access token is still valid, and to check if we can renew and update the access token if it's no more valid, or otherwise, if the token is no more valid, we redirect to the login page. And we are passing a success callback to this update token and function, and this success callback will be created from the HTTP service, because in every backend request to the server to get some data, to change some data, to delete some data, we have to put the authorization header with the access token as a bearer token. We can see that in our application. If I reload the application and we have this books request of all the books, see you get the books, the data of the books, and the request contains an authorization header, the bearer with the access token. So to achieve this automatically with every backend request, and so that you don't have to put it in every request manually, I have set up the HTTP service. My HTTP client is Axios, and I just create the Axios client, and Axios has the concept of interceptors, and I'm configuring the request interceptor so that I configure the headers with the authorization header, the bearer, and the current token, but only if the token is still valid, and this I will check in the user service update token, and I'm giving this callback for the authorization header to this update token method, and yeah, then the token will be automatically injected to every request handled by the Axios adapter, and that's the update token from the user service. That's all we have to do for configuring the backend requests. And so with every request to the backend, the token is put into the authorization header. So the application itself is just the application. Here's nothing special about authentication Keycloak, the user itself. It's just the provider for the store, the router, and some routes. And we have the book box component. We're accessing the state for getting the books. And if we have a look at the method for obtaining all the books from the backend, you see this is just a plain action creator, nothing about the token itself, because again, this is handled by the request interceptor of Axios. So the book box again, we have this line, welcome user service get username. This is exactly what you see here in the upper line, welcome does Niko, that's my username. I authenticated with this username, and I can get from the user service get username exactly the username. And again, let's have a look. Get username is just a wrapper for the Keycloak object. We're accessing the parsed token and accessing the field preferred username. And we simply could do some get first name, a new method to accessing the Keycloak object, again the token parsed, and if it's available we're getting the given name, that's the first name in the access token. We're exporting that function and use it in here in our book box, get first name, and then just have a look into our application, do a reload, and we see welcome Niko. It's the first name, no more my username. I can access every attribute, every parameter from the access token itself. And yeah, that's it. How to deal in your components, in your views with the user service, and to deal with the token, with the user data itself. You don't need any further library to do this. Also, we can call the logout function on the button. We see here the logout button. If I call the logout, click the logout button, I will be logged out and directly redirected to the login page, because we are no more authenticated. And if I log in again, I'm here again. And below you will see I have a component render on roll. So this is just a convenient component to manage if the subnodes, the children, will be rendered if a user has a certain role. And let's have a look into this component. This is also pretty that simple. I'm just checking if a user has a role on our user service, and if the user doesn't have one of the given roles, I'm just returning a null. Otherwise, I'm returning the children. So we're looking into user service has role. That's the has role function, and just checking on array if at least one of these roles are contained as a realm role in the Keycloak object. Of course, you can extend it with your own logic to not just only to check the realm roles, but also some client roles, whatever you want to check. And in our component render on role, we're just using this function in our book box, and it will only be rendered if a user has a role user. Then the user can submit new books. So let's have a look. I can see it. I can submit new books because I have the role user. Let's have a look into our user. I see in the role mappings, yes, I have an assigned role user. When I remove the role from the user, log out and log in again, because I have to re-authenticate that I have to I will be given a new access token. I will see I'm not able to create any more book, but I'm able to delete a book, and perhaps deletion of books is a bit more a bit more dangerous. So only administrators should be able to delete books, and we can extend our application. So let's do the same with the render on role component here. Let's copy it and let's have a look into the book where the delete book button is located. And here I just can wrap the button with the render on role component, and we're not using the user role, we're using the admin role in this case. And now if we reload the application, we should also not see the delete button anymore because our user doesn't have any role. So the delete button also disappears. And if we now do log out and here assign again the user and admin role to our user, authenticate again to get a new access token. I need the correct password. Then you see I have the delete book and the add a new book form again, and can do whatever I want. So now that I have achieved everything that I want, I can write a new book about Keycloak and React.js done right. So that's it. Anything else? We have secured some components. You can secure in the same way some complete views if a user is logged in or if a user is anonymous. So if it's not logged in and all this stuff, just simple wrapper components using some methods, some functions from the user service. Checking if a user is logged in or not. If you want to know if a user is logged in or not, you can use a function is logged in, perhaps, and just return if the user has a token or not. So this will evaluate to true if the user has a token, and if the user is not authenticated, the token attribute of the Keycloak object will be null or undefined, and then it will be evaluated to false. And you can deal with the is logged in function of the user service in your code. Don't have to deal directly with the Keycloak object, with Keycloak code, with Keycloak APIs, so you can encapsulate everything. Don't have your team members to learn Keycloak in detail, to learn the Keycloak API. So you can encapsulate everything you need in the user service. So yeah, I think we're done. We just secured parts of our application. We have a user service dealing with all the things around the user and around Keycloak. And we have the HTTP service we had a look into to configure all the backend requests automatically with the bearer token from the user service from Keycloak. so that all the backend requests are also secured and the backend server can check these tokens for validity and for integrity. And yeah, that's it. You're done. Now, one thing I forgot to mention, of course, the demo code of all this you saw is available in my public GitHub repository, Niko KeyCloak React.JS demo, and I will put the link for this repository to the description of the video, of course. Thanks. So thanks for watching Keycloak and React.js integration. I hope you had fun watching the video, and if you have any questions, put it in the comments so that I can answer it. If you want to see any other topics covered in a short clip of me, just also put it in the comments. Yeah, just evaluate all the stuff for you and give me some thumbs up if you like the video. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel so that you don't miss any of my future recordings. And see you. Bye.